Hi everyone, so this is another one I've had a few requests for, which is to do a demo of how to do the IK-FK switch on an ARM with the two skeletons that are controlling the bind skeleton. So the first thing you need to make sure that you've done is that you've set your joints up correctly when you've got your character at your bind pose. What you need to do is make sure that all these joints in this arm control, their rotations are at 0. They can have some translation information on them, but their rotates need to be at 0. Now I've just locked that elbow so it just bends in that direction, and that second joint just there. That wrist should probably be a bit further down, but I've just done some pretty basic skinning on that just to get us sort of halfway there so I can do this for the demo. But these guys, like if you've moved these or done your range of motion or got any constraints on them, you need to have them all blown away before you start doing this. And they have to be at 0, right? That's the first thing you want to check before you start duplicating the skeleton. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this skeleton on a separate layer. So I'm just going to come in here and add it to a layer, but like what we did with the reverse foot control, and just call this bind skeleton. And that's just going to mean that I can hide that very quickly and easily, because again it's very easy to get confused when you've got skeletons sitting on top of each other. So the next thing I want to do is do a duplicate of this guy. So I'm going to select this joint up here at the top, which is the shoulder joint, and just go Control D and then Shift P. So it was Control D and then Shift P, and what that's done is, if we come into my outliner, you can see that I've made a duplicate of the shoulder and I've unparented it from the hierarchy. Now that I've done that, I'm going to hide my bind skeleton layer. Right, so it looks like that's still there, but that's actually now the one that's outside the hierarchy. So if I were to move that away and bring back the skeleton, you'll see that they are still there. Now it's very important that I leave this guy right on top of these guys, like I don't move him or rotate him from this point on. What I will do though is I'm going to come in here for these joints, and I'm just going to scale their radius up a little bit, just so I can tell quickly and easily that this is one of my control rigs. And I'll do that for the last joint on the hand there as well. So just hide my bind skeleton, grab that one, and just scale that joint up. Now I don't need any of these finger joints because this is just for the arm. So what I'm going to do is just come in here, and after the wrist, just delete all my finger joints. So I don't need the finger joints, I just need these arm joints. And again, they need them to all be at 0. And they're an exact copy, and they're sitting perfectly on top of where the bind skeleton is. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename these guys. So I'm going to go into my, I think it's under Modify, and I'm going to go to Prefix Hierarchy Names, and I'm just going to call this, so I'll make this my FK, so underscore, and I'm going to hit OK, and that's going to rename. Actually, first before I do that, I'll duplicate them both. There we go. All right, now I'm going to go through and rename it. So this one's going to be my FK. So Modify. Prefix hierarchy names, and I'm going to call this one my FK. Okay, and I'm going to call this one my IK underscore. Okay, and I'm also going to probably go in here and just take these joints here and just make them even bigger, just so I can sort of see. I basically want to be able to tell that there's 3 joints sitting on top of each other, right? And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add each of these joints to a layer. So this one here, the FK shoulder control, I'm going to come in here and just tweak, just delete that number off the end there. I'm going to create a new layer for the IK shoulder joint chain layer, and I'm going to call that IK skeleton, and save it. Make that invisible, and I'm going to create a new layer for the FK joint chain. That's just so I just have that selected, and then I push this button over here, and that just assigns it automatically. And I'm going to call this one my FK skeleton layer, and then save that. And I'll hide that. And the other thing I might do is just, I'm going to assign a color to each of these two, so it's nice and easy to tell which is which. So I'm going to come in here, double click on this little swatch here, and just choose orange color there. So now that skeleton is red. So now my FK skeleton is red, and my IK skeleton, I'm going to come in here and double click on this guy and choose, what will I choose? I'll choose that dark green. Right, so now my IK skeleton is my dark green one. So it just helps me kind of visually distinguish between which skeletons I've got. And if I see one that's like my colored one, then I know that's my bind skeleton. So it just gives me a little bit of a more of a visual cue. It helps me separate those guys out a little bit. Alright, so now that I've got my FK skeleton in place, I don't want to rotate or move this. I want to make sure this is all on 0 still. So I haven't sort of moved this to test this or anything. I'm going to start with my FK. So now I've got a micro bend in the elbow. It's not much, but there is definitely a bit of a bend in the elbow so that when I make my IK control, it knows which way to face. So I'm just going to go to skeleton, IK handle tool, and create a rotate plane solver so I can put in a pole vector later. Just grab that top joint, grab that bottom joint, there we go, and that should give me my, yep, that's giving me my AK handle. And for some reason I think I've got discrete move on my move settings. See how that's snapping? Just need to switch that off. Okay, there we go. So that gives me my IK handle. That's kind of working how I'd expect it to. And I'm just going to rename this IK handle left. And that's the first one I'm going to do. And then I'm just going to create my pole vector for this as well. And I showed you guys how to do this in the other video. So I'm going to hide the geometry here as well. And just go into polygons. It's under, where is he? Create polygon tool. There we go. Just hold down the V key, snap, snap, snap. You can see it's a pretty micro bend. Come in here, grab that vertex. It's a bit tricky to grab. There we go. Move back a normal average. Just slide that back. Right, that's just letting me know where that pole vector needs to go. So it's a bit low, but that should be fine. Okay, bring back the geometry. And I've got a I've got some pre-made curves I'm going to use just to help me out here. So that's the one I'm going to use for the pole vector. So I'm just going to call this one pole vector control, and just snap it over there. There we go. Rotate it 90 degrees. And that should be fine. Can hide that, don't need that anymore. So I'm just going to hook up that pole vector real quick. So I'll just freeze its transforms as well. So that's edit, modify, freeze transformations before I do this. That's actually on the left hand side. Control left. And I'm going to group it as well just so I can get it to follow the arm. And modify center pivot. So there's a group there for that pole vector. And just give it the same name except it's going to be group. Group. Okay, and that's a pole vector, and I'm going to basically create the pole vector for this. So I'm going to grab that guy, grab this guy, go back to animation, back to constrain, pole vector. Great. And that looks like it's working pretty well.